Jeremiah will probably remain the most misunderstood and controversial character from The Summer I Turned Pretty, and for good reason, so let's talk about it. In episode 10, we see Jeremiah well on his way to completing his character arc, finally embarking on his own journey of self-discovery and independence, and healing his broken relationships in the process. But I know a lot of you were really affected by his character's previous behavior, especially how he treated Laurel, Conrad, and Belly after the wedding was called off. I think many of you, understandably, felt that Jeremiah is just toxic, and that he probably never really loved Belly and was only marrying her to spite Conrad. But I'm here to tell you that couldn't be further from the truth. And I say this not as a personal opinion, but as an objective conclusion based on the ongoing storytelling of the show. A lot of this is clarified in episode 10 in Jeremiah and Conrad's conversation at Susanna's grave, but this is not just the show doing a complete 180 to wrap things up for the finale. The show has intentionally and consistently established 3 things about Jeremiah. 1, that he wanted to be with Belly because he genuinely loved her, not because he was trying to spite or one-up Conrad. 2, Jeremiah felt truly hurt and betrayed by Belly and Conrad, and his feelings were valid. And 3, Jeremiah's anger is an expression of his hurt, and this is actually a part of his personality that was established in previous seasons. Understanding these things about Jeremiah helps us better appreciate the complexities of his character and of the story as a whole. Because there's no complexity in a story where Belly's just trying to choose between a sociopathic narcissist and a guy who truly loves her. The tension and agony of this whole love triangle is that both Jeremiah and Conrad love Belly. By the way, this is season 3 of The Summer I Turned Pretty from the perspective of a former English teacher. Let's look at what the show has been consistently trying to tell us about Jeremiah. First, how do we know Jeremiah genuinely loved Belly? Because this was established through multiple conversations involving multiple characters. When he and Belly broke up after Cabo, Jeremiah told Redbird in earnest, "I just lost the most important person in my life. Belly's been the center of my world. She's everything to me. Losing her feels like I'm losing the best part of myself." We can be sure that this is truly how Jeremiah felt about Belly because he says something very similar to Taylor after the wedding was canceled, saying, "I don't know what to do without her. I don't know how to be. She's everything. She's my whole life." This was also validated by other supporting characters. Taylor has said to Belly about Jeremiah, "You're his oxygen. He can't breathe without you." And even when Belly's parents were unsure about supporting the wedding, John actually said they're good together. And Laurel's hesitation was always because she thought they were just too young to make such a huge commitment. And on the wedding day, we saw how truly heartbroken Jeremiah was. How even in his hurt, he told Belly, "I don't know how to not love you, even now." So from a storytelling perspective, when the show repeatedly tells us the same thing through different interactions and characters, it's because it's trying to establish a fact about Jeremiah, that he genuinely loved Belly. It doesn't mean Jeremiah's love for Belly was perfect. In fact, all the dialogue showing that Jeremiah loved Belly was also consistent in highlighting the same issue about that love, that it was very codependent. Jeremiah seeing Belly as the center of his world, as his whole life, where he doesn't know what to do without her and can't breathe without her, all these things point to the fact that Jeremiah's entire sense of self was dependent on Belly. That was the issue. It had nothing to do with Conrad. The second thing the show told us about Jeremiah was that he genuinely felt betrayed and hurt by Belly and Conrad. And again, we can confirm this through the storytelling and the use of supporting characters. The final conversation between Jeremiah and Belly before the wedding was crucial in letting us see the emotional impact that this whole thing had on Jeremiah. I know we're all rooting for Conrad and he is who Belly is meant to be with, but if we just take a moment to look at things from Jeremiah's perspective, I think we can understand his hurt and anger. It doesn't matter who loved Belly first or who loved her more. The fact of the matter is that Jeremiah was the one who built a 4-year relationship with Belly, and their love for each other was very real. Now imagine, on the eve of your wedding, you find out that your brother just confessed his love to her fiancée and asked her to be with him instead of marrying you. And that your fiancée was so moved by the confession that she could no longer deny the fact that she also has feelings for him and that a part of her will always love him. Imagine how gaslit you must feel when this whole time you've had your suspicions but had tried to convince yourself that they were just your own insecurities. And how angry you must feel that these 2 people that you trusted the most betrayed you in this way. And the worst part is that because Jeremiah's sense of self was so dependent on Belly, he didn't just lose his fiancée, he also lost the foundation on which he built his identity. So this was a world-shattering loss for Jeremiah. And his hurt was validated by the other characters. We saw it in the way they rallied around him and tried to care for him. We saw it in Stephen's anger towards Conrad. And Conrad himself also acknowledged and validated Jeremiah's hurt and anger when he said to Adam, "I broke him. He's hurting so much. I don't think he'll ever forgive me, and he probably shouldn't." The show is telling us that Jeremiah isn't just some toxic narcissist. His hurt was real and his anger was valid. And this brings us to the third and final thing, Jeremiah's anger. The show has always been clear in establishing that one difference between Conrad and Jeremiah is that Conrad is emotionally what I call a turtle, while Jeremiah is emotionally a porcupine. Meaning, Conrad deals with things by withdrawing and holding things in, going inward like a turtle, while Jeremiah goes outward like a porcupine, lashing out and being prickly. This has consistently been a part of the storytelling in previous seasons. And one of the most revealing scenes was when Belly confronted Jeremiah in season 2 about why he was so angry with her that he had ignored her for months. And when it all came out, it was because Jeremiah was incredibly hurt by the fact that Belly and everyone else had abandoned him during Susanna's illness and death. Jeremiah's broken vulnerability in that scene gave us critical insight into how his character deals with pain and how he responds when someone deeply hurts him. That's why he was so harsh, bitter, and spiteful in the aftermath of the wedding being called off. Jeremiah was expressing his pain through anger. So when Laurel showed up to check on him, Laurel, who had vocally opposed the wedding and spent weeks refusing to give her support, we can understand how it's triggering for Jeremiah and why he would be so bitter towards her. And the show actually wanted to make sure that we make that connection between his anger and hurt, because after Jeremiah shut the door on her, we were shown that he was in tears. And this was again just validated in episode 10 when Jeremiah apologized to Laurel for how he behaved, and she responded, "It's okay, sweetheart. I know you were hurting." The show's storytelling is very consistent. Same goes for Jeremiah's conversation with Conrad. When Jeremiah very spitefully told Conrad that Belly's in Paris and not coming back, that vengeful glee was a result of his pain. Of course he wanted to hurt Conrad, because Jeremiah felt deeply betrayed and hurt by him. Conrad pleaded with Belly to be with him instead of marrying Jeremiah, so when they called off the wedding and Belly ran off to Paris instead of to Conrad, to Jeremiah, that was the only morsel of bitter justice that he could have. That's why he said to Conrad, "She didn't choose me, but she didn't pick you either." And when it comes to Belly, we already know that so much of Jeremiah's sense of self was dependent on her. We saw how depressed and lost he was after the wedding. He was basically just waiting and hoping that Belly would come back. And when she finally told him she's not coming back, he lashed out and told her to never call him again. That was an expression of Jeremiah's hurt, because Belly not coming back made him feel abandoned all over again, losing the only person other than his mom that made him feel like he was loved and cherished. So what does this all mean? It means Jeremiah was never a villain. The show never portrayed him as one, but rather he's a complex character with valid feelings and motivations who deserves to be understood. Like all the other characters, Jeremiah is flawed and makes mistakes, but he's learning and doing his best to navigate life and love. And that's what makes this story so interesting, complex, and, dramatic love triangle aside, relatable.